The Cook. A historical fiction of love, identity and fate by S.J. Jeppsson. Chapter 28. A Day in the City. Kate stood poised at the entrance of Weatherby House, the grand double doors looming behind her, their gilded carvings gleaming in the soft morning light. A gentle breeze rustled the ivy along the stone columns, teasing a few loose tendrils of her carefully styled hair. Her hands, encased in delicate pearl-grey gloves, smoothed down the front of her fine day dress, a soft shade of lavender, the fabric embroidered with intricate lace detailing. The hat perched upon her head adorned with a single violet ribbon, tilted slightly as she lifted her chin, watching as the motorcar rumbled to life on the driveway. Mr. Finch had arranged everything, ensuring that she would be accompanied by Sebastian at the wheel and Evelyn as her chaperone, a pairing that, while formal on the surface, carried with it a spark of something far less rigid beneath the surface. Outside, the automobile gleamed a deep navy, its brass fixtures polished to perfection, reflecting the pale blue of the morning sky. Sebastian stood beside it, rolling up the cuffs of his crisp white shirt, his suspenders taut against his broad frame. He exhaled slowly, tapping his fingers against the open door, his sharp gaze assessing Kate as she approached.
"Miss Weatherby,"
he greeted smoothly, his tone dipped in polite formality, but his eyes carrying something unreadable. Kate, playing the role expected of her, inclined her head gracefully.
"Sebastian."
Beside her, Evelyn beamed, adjusting the ribbons of her hat, the soft blush fabric complementing the delicate floral pattern of her prim, lace-trimmed dress.
"Good morning, Miss Weatherby,"
Evelyn said brightly, her eyes alight with anticipation.
"I'm absolutely thrilled to be accompanying you to the city today. Imagine dining at a fine restaurant, admiring all the latest fashions. It would be marvellous."
Kate returned her smile, her tone warm and gracious.
"Good morning, Evelyn. It does sound wonderful. I'm looking forward to it as well."
As Kate settled into the plush leather seat, Evelyn followed, her skirts rustling against the interior as she fussed with the hem. Sebastian shut the door behind them with a decisive click, then rounded the front of the car, sliding into the driver's seat with an easy familiarity. The deep rumble of the motor filled the crisp air, and they pulled away from the grand estate, kicking up a soft cloud of dust behind them. At first, the ride was steeped in formality. Evelyn sat perfectly poised, her gloved hands folded in her lap, her back straight as a board. Kate, meanwhile, gazed out at the passing scenery, watching as the manicured gardens and rolling green hills of Weatherby House gradually gave way to the untamed sprawl of the open countryside. But as the landscape shifted, so did the atmosphere inside the car. The stiff formality cracked just a little. Sebastian, who had been quietly focused on the road, glanced at them through the rearview mirror, a hint of amusement curling at the edges of his mouth.
"So, Miss Weatherby,"
he drawled at last, his tone just shy of teasing.
"are we making this trip just to spend Lord Hollingsworth's fortune on silk and lace, or is there another grand purpose to today's adventure?"
Kate laughed unexpectedly, the sound bright and unrestrained, catching them both off guard.
"I wouldn't say no to silk and lace,"
she admitted, her eyes twinkling.
"but honestly, I just want to see it all. The people, the streets, the noise. I want to know what it's like to truly experience New York, not just from a drawing room window."
Sebastian raised a brow, stealing a glance at her in the mirror.
"Most ladies of your standing don't care about things like that."
Kate tilted her head, a playful smirk dancing on her lips.
"Then perhaps I'm not like most ladies."
Evelyn giggled, clearly delighted by the exchange.
"I knew there was something different about you,"
she said, nudging Kate lightly. And just like that, the stiffness melted away, replaced by something easier, something almost like friendship.
"I have the privilege of choosing our lunch destination," since you two ladies will be indulging in an afternoon of shopping.
Sebastian declared with a smug grin. His voice drifted into the background as Kate gazed out the window, watching the towering steel framework of the Manhattan Bridge rise around them, the city unfolding like a promise beyond its span. By the time they arrived in the heart of New York City, the streets pulsed with life. Carriages clattered over cobblestones, their polished wheels sending echoes through the bustling avenues. Street vendors called out their wares, the scent of roasting chestnuts, fresh bread, and sizzling sausages mixing with the sharper tang of coal smoke and the faintest trace of expensive perfume drifting from passing ladies. Kate had never seen anything like it. Everything was in motion. Newsboys darted between carriages, shouting the day's headlines. Shopkeepers leaned from their doorways, beckoning customers inside, and gentlemen in fine tailored suits stood on street corners, tipping their hats to passing ladies. There was an energy here, an urgency, a thrill she had never experienced. Across the street, a newsboy darted between carriages, his stack of papers clutched tight against his chest.
Astor's body recovered,
He cried, his thin voice carrying over the clatter and din.
Titanic millionaire brought home at last.
The words cut briefly through the noise, swallowed just as quickly by the rush of the crowd. But for Kate, they lingered, a quiet reminder of the world beyond her borrowed name, of the ship that had changed everything. After a stroll through the narrow, lively streets, Sebastian finally slowed his pace, stopping before a modest wooden storefront tucked between a tailor's shop and a bookshop. Kate glanced up at the weathered sign hanging above the entrance, the smell of butter, sizzling meat, and freshly baked bread seeping through the doorway. Evelyn frowned, her gaze flicking over the plain wooden exterior.
A local place?
She mused, adjusting her gloves.
I would have thought you'd take us somewhere a bit more elegant.
Sebastian smirked, leaning one arm against the doorframe, impossibly at ease.
You can get caviar and quail eggs at Weatherby House. But this?
He gestured toward the restaurant.
This is real New York.
Kate hesitated only for a moment before stepping inside. Immediately she was enveloped in the rich, warm atmosphere, the low hum of conversation, the clinking of heavy ceramic plates, the scent of slow-cooked meats, and rich golden gravies, mingling with the faintest hint of wood smoke from the kitchen's roaring hearth. The restaurant was small but lively, the kind of place where families crowded into booths, shoulders brushing as they shared plates and laughter. Waitresses in starched aprons weaved effortlessly through the tables, balancing trays laden with buttered biscuits, bowls of steaming stew, and thick slices of pie topped with melting cream. Kate slid into a cozy booth near the window, the red leather cushioning cool beneath her as she settled in. The scent of sizzling meat, caramelized onions, and freshly baked bread filled the small space, wrapping around her like an embrace. She rested her hands on the smooth wooden table, fingers tracing the worn grooves and scratches left behind by years of patrons before her. She hadn't realized how hungry she was until now. The moment the waiter approached, his white apron dusted with flour and his sleeves rolled up past his elbows, he greeted them with a familiar nod. With a practiced flick of the wrist, he set down 3 well-worn menus, their edges curling slightly from years of eager hands flipping through them. Kate took the menu gently, running her fingertips over the pages, the ink slightly smudged in places where someone had once traced their own choices. The scent of warm spices and slow-simmered broth curled through the air, making her stomach tighten in anticipation. Her gaze travelled down the list of offerings, each dish a quiet echo of another life, another kitchen. Beef and Guinness, stew thick and rich, ladled over a bed of colcannon. Fisherman's pie golden-crusted, brimming with haddock, shrimp and cream. Dublin coddle, its hearty blend of sausages and potatoes slow-cooked in broth. They also served boxty, Sebastian had informed her, a beloved Irish potato pancake, crisp and golden on the outside, soft and pillowy within, accompanied by a delicate spread of sour cream and slivers of smoked salmon. The names blurred slightly as she read, the warmth of the restaurant pressing around her like a memory she couldn't quite grasp. As her gaze travelled down the list, her breath caught mid-inhale.
They serve meat pies.
The words left her lips in a whisper barely audible, more to herself than anyone else. The moment she spoke them, something stirred deep within her. A memory, a longing, an ache she hadn't expected. Sebastian, ever observant, leaned back against the booth, his dark eyes catching the flicker of emotion that crossed her face. He studied her in that quiet, unreadable way of his, watching as her fingers stilled over the menu.
You a fan?
He asked, the question light but filled with curiosity. Kate smiled wistfully, but the expression was tinged with something else, something distant. Her fingers skimmed the menu absently, the smooth paper suddenly feeling foreign beneath her hands.
My mother,
She hesitated, her voice faltering. The word hung in the air for just a fraction too long before she swallowed, forcing herself to continue. She could not tell them that. She forced an easy smile, her voice steadying as she corrected herself.
I haven't yet made them for my mother.
She paused.
My instructor at finishing school, Nanny, she taught me how to make them, best in the world.
From across the table, Evelyn, who had been idly picking at the lace on her gloves, lost in thought, suddenly perked up, her green eyes snapping to Kate's with renewed interest.
Oh, really?
She mused, her lips curving into a slow, mischievous grin. Sebastian arched a brow, intrigued now, his gaze flicking between them as if assessing whether there was more to this story than Kate was letting on.
Is that what you're ordering then?
Sebastian asked, a hint of amusement in his voice. Kate laughed lightly, setting her menu aside.
Honestly, I can't imagine ordering a meat pie at a restaurant when I can make one for myself anytime I please.
The candlelight flickered across their table, casting a warm golden glow over the polished wood. Around them, Christopher's landing bustled with life. The hum of conversation, the occasional burst of laughter, the rhythmic clatter of plates and silverware. The air was rich with the scent of buttered biscuits and slow-roasted meats, each indulgent aroma weaving through the glow of the lanterns above.
Then you must make this famous meat pie for us,
Evelyn declared, eyes gleaming with mischief as she leaned forward, resting her elbow against the table. Lifting her glass, she swirled the amber liquid within, her smile playful.
Consider this a challenge.
Kate laughed softly, shaking her head.
If you insist.
Before Evelyn could issue another teasing remark, a warm, familiar voice cut through the lively din.
Sebastian, me boy, you didn't tell me you'd be stopping by.
Kate glanced up just as a woman approached their table, her presence radiating warmth and quiet authority. She was in her early 50s, her dark auburn hair streaked with silver, her Irish features softened by the passage of time, yet still striking. A proud, hard-working woman whose hands had likely shaped every corner of this restaurant. Sebastian rose with a knowing smirk, kissing her cheek in greeting.
Didn't want to cause a stir, Ma.
He said lightly. Mrs. Christopher scoffed, giving him a look of mock skepticism.
You? Cause a stir?
She arched a brow, then added with a wry smile.
Now, if your brother walked in, that would really turn heads.
Sebastian let out a low chuckle.
Well, I wouldn't hold your breath, Ma.
She laughed and turned her gaze to Kate, her expression shifting to one of genuine warmth.
And you must be Miss Weatherby. Welcome home. It's a pleasure to meet you, dear.
Kate offered a polite smile, dipping her head slightly.
Likewise. Your restaurant is lovely.
Thank you, darling.
She placed a gentle hand on Kate's arm before glancing toward Evelyn with familiarity.
And of course, Evelyn, I'd recognise that sharp tongue anywhere.
Evelyn grinned.
I prefer to call it wit, Mrs. Christopher.
The older woman laughed, the sound rich with affection.
Ah, is that what we're calling it now?
Sebastian sighed with long, suffering patience.
Ladies, I beg of you, can we not encourage her?
Kate found herself smiling despite everything, the easy banter and warmth of Christopher's Landing feeling strangely familiar, like home. Their conversation flowed effortlessly as they perused the menu, the comforting hum of the restaurant wrapping around them like an old friend. When the waiter arrived, orders were placed. Rich stews, roasted meats, fresh-baked bread still warm from the oven. Kate, ever a lover of crisp potatoes and the delicate savour of smoked salmon, had settled on the box tea, a choice that felt both indulgent and perfectly fitting. As their menus were whisked away, Evelyn turned to Kate with a knowing grin, nudging her lightly with her shoulder.
Tonight, when we get back, a midnight snack of meat pies,
she declared, as if it were already decided. Kate laughed, surprised by how easy it was to imagine Evelyn beside her in a flour-dusted kitchen, sleeves rolled, cheeks pink from oven heat. A different life, a different world. Then, shaking her head, her fingers absent-mindedly tracing the rim of her glass, she said,
"You're both impossible."
But as she sat there wrapped in the warmth of their easy banter, surrounded by the smell of freshly baked bread and spiced meats, a feeling stirred deep within her, a longing she hadn't allowed herself to acknowledge. Because truth be told, she had been longing for the simple act of baking again, of kneading dough, of the comforting scent of pastry warming in the oven, of the simple familiar rhythm of something that had once been her entire world. Since leaving Titchfield, she had almost forgotten what it was like to create something with her hands, something real, once again. The moment the automobile rolled to a stop in front of Sinclair and Company, Kate tilted her head to admire the grand facade of the boutique. The gold-lettered sign gleamed in the afternoon sun, elegant and understated, as if to say that those who belonged inside already knew its name. Through the towering display windows, mannequins were adorned in the latest Parisian fashions, their silk gowns shimmering under the soft glow of crystal chandeliers. Kate knew enough about boutiques to understand that she was about to enter a world built on wealth and exclusivity. A world where women like Margaret Weatherby and Mrs. Gentry were accustomed to spending entire afternoons selecting gowns that would be worn once, perhaps twice, before being discarded for something newer. A world she still wasn't sure she belonged in. Kate glanced toward the entrance, only to find that Mr. Finch had apparently made arrangements beforehand, ensuring that Sinclair and Company's staff would be prepared for their arrival. A moment later, the double doors swung open, and the shop attendants were suddenly all smiles and eager enthusiasm.
Miss Weatherby!
The lead shop girl, a woman dressed in an elegant grey blouse with a pearl brooch at her collar, greeted her with a voice that practically dripped with admiration.
What an honor. We've been expecting you. Please, right this way.
Kate barely had time to react before she was being ushered inside, past rows of opulent gowns, past glass cases filled with delicate lace gloves and beaded purses, past perfume bottles arranged like precious gems on mirrored trays. Behind her, Evelyn exchanged a knowing glance with Sebastian.
Mr. Finch always thinks of everything,
Evelyn whispered with amusement, following after Kate with an air of self-satisfaction. Sebastian, meanwhile, lingered outside, leaning against the automobile, lighting a cigarette with an exasperated shake of his head. Inside the boutique, Kate was swiftly guided to the private fitting area, where she was met by a flurry of hands and measuring tapes. Within minutes, she was being pinned, fitted, and fawned over.
Such exquisite proportions, Miss Weatherby.
One of the seamstresses cooed, adjusting the fabric at her waist.
The most delicate complexion, perhaps a soft blue to highlight the eyes.
Another mused, already sorting through bolts of fabric. Kate stood perfectly still, feeling more like a dressmaker's mannequin than a real person, as silk and lace were draped, clipped, and pinned around her. Meanwhile, Evelyn had claimed a spot on the plush velvet chaise in the corner, lounging with a glass of champagne in hand.
"Oh, don't mind me,"
she said airily, popping a sugared pastry into her mouth as she observed the scene with great amusement.
I'm simply here to ensure you don't pick anything dreadfully unflattering.
Kate shot her a half-hearted glare through the mirror.
I'm sure your expertise is invaluable.
Evelyn lifted her glass.
You are most welcome.
Kate turned back to her reflection, watching as a soft ivory gown was adjusted at her shoulders. The fabric shimmered faintly under the golden light, its embroidered detailing delicate and precise. She knew she should be enjoying this, what girl wouldn't? And yet, the longer she stared at her own reflection, the more the feeling of displacement crept in. The shop attendants treated her as if she belonged here, but Kate knew the truth. She wasn't Lydia Weatherby. She wasn't the kind of woman who had grown up with silk gowns tailored just for her, or jewels chosen to match the colour of her eyes. She was just Kate Cook, a baker's daughter, a girl who had stepped off a ship, wide-eyed and terrified, and somehow ended up in a life that wasn't her own. And yet here she was, fitted, measured, admired, pretending. The dressmaker's assistants flitted around Kate, adjusting pins and smoothing out delicate fabrics, their voices a chorus of admiration.
Such a beautiful fit, Miss Weatherby.
One gushed, stepping back to admire her work.
And the color, it suits you perfectly.
Kate barely heard them. She doubted she would ever grow accustomed to the fawning, the gentle adjustments, the endless opinions about what would best complement her figure or bring out her eyes. Instead, she cast a glance toward Evelyn, who stood nearby, arms folded, watching with mild amusement.
Tell me, Evelyn,
Kate said lightly, as if the thought had only just occurred to her.
How did you come to work at Weatherby House?
Evelyn blinked at the sudden shift in conversation, but answered easily.
Oh, I was fortunate. My mother was acquainted with the last head housekeeper, and she arranged for me to be hired.
Kate thought about her own fortune, how she had been chosen for this journey not by chance, but through her mother's long-forgotten ties to the Hollingsworth family. But that was a truth she couldn't share, not even with Evelyn. Instead, she simply nodded, offering a small smile as the dressmaker fussed over the delicate lace at her sleeve.
And what about Sebastian?
She asked casually.
What's his story?
Evelyn's lips quirked in a knowing smile.
Why? Curious about our mysterious footman?
Kate rolled her eyes.
Just making conversation.
Evelyn smoothed an invisible wrinkle from her own skirt.
Sebastian came to Weatherby House about 5 years ago. He and his brother had left Christopher's Landing, so Mr. Finch took him on as a footman.
Kate stilled, her fingers brushing over the satin folds of her gown.
His brother is away then?
She mused, recalling Mrs. Christopher's remark at the restaurant.
Oh yes, Gideon,
Evelyn replied, absently examining the lace on one of the nearby dresses.
Nice guy. Haven't seen him in years though. He's off, travelling the world somewhere. Always had that restless streak, you know? Last I heard, he was somewhere in Africa, or maybe the Middle East.
The name hit Kate like a sudden drop in altitude. Gideon Christopher, a family-owned restaurant called Christopher's Landing. How had she not realised it before? How stupid that she hadn't noticed. Gone for 5 years. Travelling the world. It couldn't be. But it was. Sebastian's brother was Lydia's Gideon. Her heart skipped once, twice, then fell like a stone. Sebastian's brother, Gideon, the one who never made it home. The breath caught in Kate's throat, but she forced herself to remain still, to nod as though this was nothing more than idle talk. Sebastian didn't know. His family didn't know. They had no idea that Gideon had been aboard the Titanic, that he had never made it home, that he would never make it home. Evelyn let out a short laugh.
Used to threaten he'd run off and join the French Foreign Legion.
She shook her head fondly.
We all thought it was hilarious. Gideon's a lover, not a fighter. The idea of him in a uniform, taking orders, never would have happened.
She smirked.
But then again, knowing him, he probably got distracted along the way and ended up in some cafe in Paris, charming the locals instead.
How could Kate possibly be the one to tell them? How could she explain how she knew? There was no way, not without exposing everything. So instead, she swallowed down the truth and let the conversation move on, forcing herself to smile at Evelyn's next remark. But the weight of it lingered. Because no matter how much she enjoyed their company, how easily she had fallen into step with them in this strange new life, this was something she could never share. Lydia had made her choice and Kate would honour it, no matter the cost. Outside, Sebastian took a slow drag of his cigarette, exhaling a plume of smoke into the evening air. Across the street, a couple of young men in well-tailored suits strolled past, glancing toward the automobile with interest.
Important lady inside?
One of them called, smirking. Sebastian exhaled slowly, unimpressed.
You could say that.
He replied, tapping ash off the end of his cigarette. The young men chuckled before continuing on their way, leaving Sebastian to shake his head. The whole thing amused and annoyed him in equal measure. Lydia, who not so long ago had been an uncertain girl stepping off a ship, was now inside one of the most exclusive boutiques in the city, being treated like royalty. It was almost ridiculous. Almost. Because for Sebastian, the very idea of spending an obscene amount of money on a single dress, let alone an entire wardrobe, was absurd. He had grown up in a world where every dollar mattered, where his parents had built Christopher's Landing from the ground up, where a day's work was measured in sweat and skill, not silk and lace. Even now, working in the grand halls of Weatherby House, he found the extravagance of the upper class to be excessive at best, wasteful at worst. He had rolled his eyes when he heard how much the Weatherbys had paid for her passage aboard the Titanic, and now, watching Lydia drape herself in the finest fabrics without a second thought, he couldn't help but think how absurd it all was. And yet, he had noticed something about her. That slight hesitation before she spoke, the way she sometimes answered questions a beat too late, as though piecing together a puzzle in her own mind. She was hiding something. And one day, perhaps he would know what it was.